All rise. We will.
Dano wenyo amalo.
The International Criminal
Court me wilobodong tituolo.
Please be seated.
Oramo bedu piny.
Good morning, everyone.
Langol ko pa amoro dano duju. Latish court ramalungo lokman. Latish court amore la dir president lungol ko pa man inikwa jemi muti me Uganda gen lokma lukela doro kelu kum Dominic Ongwen ICC 0 ario 0 angwen apara bich wan wati court mati tuolo pilwak langol ko pa foyo alego ni dano mati ot court kan gulung gu nyote lamegu prosecutor lamegu fatu amori la dir president amoro ulungol ko pa wan lukela dotien watie Madam Bensuda afoyo joma chung pi joma ketimo bale kumgi lamegu masida more la dir president lungol kop wan joma wachung pi joma ketimo bale kumgi atie wani Paulina Masida ke Caroline Walter Walter Kumakech tie ka winyo lokwa ki Uganda afoyo nanu la diet mawira kanbene eromanyote amore la diet president lungol kop wan joma wachung pi joma kitimo bale kumgi watie ki Joseph Manoba ma NTA office Kampala. La diet Manoba amore la diet president amore lungol kop la diet Francisco Cox tie ka lupulokman ki Mexico la diet Cox amore langol kop amore dano duju la titwachel tika lupulokman ki Nairobi Anushka amori lungol kop amori watiki Maria Radiowska matieka winyu lokman ti lupulokman ki Wosko amori ki la tichwa mukenne tieka lupulokman ki Kampala.
Good morning, Your
La Megualing, amori lungol kop ki la tichwa mukene atel tie ka winyulokwa kigulu. Mori lungol kop ki Ann James Mawira afoyo. Langol kop in iti otkot kany eyo afoyo. Pi lupiema dot la dira yena.
Good morning.
Ladira Yana, Amori Ladir President, Amori Lungolko, Panya Crispus Ayana, Wadon, and Atikatelu, we Lupiema Dot, Atiki Thomas Oboff, Gordon Kifude, Morgan Hausling, Johnny Wayne, Tie I Otcourt, I Kabero Palua, Kwatie ki Maria Allen, Prolo, ki Michael Rosebene, Tie I Otcourt Kany. Langol kop dano makikelu ador kumene beti otkor kan la dira yana kakara dan ma watika chung pirani la dir Dominic Ongwen bene ti otkor kan la dira yana foyo me poy wiye langol kop ayela pe langol kop tien wan wati I otkor kan wek jang kot umi moke I kot matie tuolo pilwa ka moke mati maporite dul piera biru yangwen me chek me Roma makwaro adot makikelo ikum Dominic Ongwen kit ma chek tero pede man enini wabe miu mokwa ki jemi ma uwerwa moro kumeno wiye jankot kong obe miu lokman wiye moke wiye kadong la chien obe kwanu mok ma jankot umore kum Dominic Ongwen mok ma ichoch ki chwalo tien man enini ki chwalo inge winyo lokman eoni a document ma pierre ket ma waj kede jankot ubicharo kong ki lok wiye Bedok kit maman ubedu kede lok ma ubedu ki jemi maduong ki lok ma duong ye ubiteru kare. Lok man kwako bal ikum makitimi kum dano ki bal makitimi kare me mony ikumalume Uganda ni cha ikene dwe ma achel neno dwe achel dwe ma abiro ma alivario ka dek ki neno dwe piero dek dwe achel dwe ma apar ariyo ma alivario ka abich. Ikar me pido man jankot uwinyo loki bocha den mapol ikum jemi maraj ma ubedo katime ikumalume Uganda magengu karye ikare man ento LRA bene ubedo katich ikumalume Uganda ni chake I kene mwaka piera boro gini kuru me Uganda ni bene uri pikar maromo mwaka piera ngwen. Lokman bene bi nyoti wajemi ma utime I Uganda ikare ma ngej kibene chan madano bedo kadeno ne ikare me kuru man. LRA uchao kuru ikum gamente me Uganda. LRA mauno tiye Dominic Ongwen no gengenenu rea mauno gibedo ikumalume Uganda chalu gen giwinye ki gamente me Uganda chi dongenenu John eni chalu lumonegi man enini tira ne jo mauno gibedo I camp IDP camp mauno dano ugore ye komanda pa LRA Paul Karano giwachini rea petika mi ukony bot gen giti kachwako gamente manyuti ni LRA miera unek rea magi. Pikar enini LRA unero rea maduong uwano bene dano maduong rea maduong maono gitie I IDP camp ki kabiru mukene bene ikumalume Uganda. Ikar makipenyo eni ka chelu rea ono udarobal chaden P014 wachini ngatimo peti ngatimo maono neno eni ka ono ka ni eni nobal ka ono rea wane onyo kichelu rea. LRA bene umaro bene guchoyo welu tiano maduong mamwaka gipe o apara beach idul mony man dokiti yuke gime me lweny. Chaden P0 abiro malupe ki jemi ma eno karo ki ye chalu la mony isinia wachini yo metich en kitman teki wangole kum ngati mo miero mak ngati oni wate gene lum man enini enigin maono miero watim kare ki kare wa kumed welwa wanjo ma wati lumi manyotini mako recruit manyen no bedu gen matime kare ki kare chi beono petie ni komanda mo miara umiwu oda ni uchero chi mak ngati mo ento enini no ubedu votich ma wan watimo. LRA umaro benegu kero ikwome upi anyira ki mon maduong jo enini kiberu katich ket gichalu pi me voro mon kidok bene lutich ot jankot ubilore kuman la chen Dominic Ongwen kikume kimare imwaka piera boro wiabiro ikar maono entie kimwaka abungwen jankot ngeni en uwoki pero maduong itieno ne ki ibulu ne jankot bil nenu lokman la chen ikar manoti imokman ento lokman enini kwako bal ma Dominic Ongwen mutimo machalu dano maladit bedok chelu komanda me LRA ikar ma entie ikena mwaka piera rio wia biki piera rio wia bungwen gini ikar ma kikelia doti ni chake niano dwe chel me dwe ma bier mwaka alivario ka rio kiniano dwe piera dek wia chel dwe ma para rio mwaka alivario ka bich la diru ngwen roma medeu yoru yot I Rometela LRA ni chake ki battalion commander ni Owa I commander me senior brigade. Ikareman da senior brigade notie ye lumony maduong mia ki mia maono gen gitie iteloch pa Dominic Ongwen. Ger pa LRA ikumdano maono gen gibedi camp ene kwaro lokman eni pieratere lokman bal ma ketimo bal muguma ketimu kwaro oto mony ma kibedo ka monyone ikum camp magi IDP camp ubedo yo megge kukuru ma gamente me Uganda utiyu kere me kwanyo dano ki charo metergi I camp magipien gamente no tame kiromo wano joni kapego konyo adui tie kar mukene kiwachi ni kwanyo dano ki camp enini kitimo kitek ono ket maki yubo kede dul matieno me mon pa Uganda maki ngeyu gini Uganda People's Defense Force onyo UPDF ki LDU mauno giti ye cho me kengang kivulu ite lodge pa UPDF eneno miara gugwak jo enini ento man putiu bedok kar mukene ono pere fu odorotek karwo ki camp bene ono ki geo cham kijemi mukene ono dul mukene chalu World Food Program enegi miyo ikar mapiny raja dada ikene mwaka alivario kangwen ono IDP camp tie mia kimia kede beti ni jo kene no gibedu woro ma no gibedi iken town pol dano ma no giti kenyo no giti camp ma no tie dano maramo million achel kinuchu bedu I camp magi ono pebe gamente me Uganda no pe miu cham gamente me Uganda no pe miu gi jemmi me leon bedare je kony me yat me nongo yat ki dakta ono pere jankor kumbesini ubi logo matut ikum mok kit magengi moro kede lori makwaro monyo camp angwen eguni ma futpia kitimo man anamitini ananuoni ubedu teko twal bot jankor me lo moko nying cha dan maktimo bali kum gi wenka chel ma ki kelia dor kum Dominic Ongwen ento ka ono twere jankot utimo man joma kitimo bali kum gi eguni miara peki wili kum gi wan wabiluo nyingi I ot kot kany kitma nyingi bene tie I mok me makichoyo utim makija ka analuo nying dano eguni maraju I udiku me neno dwe apa dwe ma apa ma alivario ka ngwen lulwen pa LRA mia kimia mauno ti ye Dominic Ongwen gumonyo pa Jule camp ti Aru County Ipade District ikinu lwen pa LRA no ti ye dano mamwaga gi pe o apara biro LRA no gitiki jemi maduong mauno giti ye imudoro mechelu tank mudoro mechelu dege machine gun ki mudoro matiano pala panga ki pala dano ono guberu ka kweru niandwa uru iduo mukaro angej monyman ki yubu niano mapul mukaro angej ki lo LR commander pa LRA maono Dominic T kienge la telame kachoke man no Vincent Uti maono NAT number rio me LRA jo enini lu lwen keteti ketamiara gen guchet kede guchet gumon gumon barracks pa UPDF ki camp no miri no tieme kwalu cham kijeme mukene kiwach kibene ni gumak rea lumon pa LRA gu yupe idul ma pat la tela maono loyo ene no nyeras kalukuya Dominic Ongwen utelu wijo maono gu bichero I barracks ma en futpia uchwalugi I trading center maono tie I die camp Kenyo lumon pa gamente maono gengi tie I camp Kenyo ikiena rea gu reyon ento lumon pa gamente maono gengi tie barracks gu chung king kere ka betini LRA ubedo ka chwelugi mater ikara melwen kilumon pagamente lulwen pa LRA mapol bene kinerogi I trading center Dominic Ongwen u chwalo lulwenye ni guchere gu otmony kunu eno waji kilo lwenye ni guchet gu yak cham kijeme mukene ki dukan ki gai padano matie I camp ki yako jemi maduong ki camp Kenyo ka wenye camp Kenyo lulwen pa LRA gu toro dukana dane I trading center ki I odi padano bene gu kwanyo le gu kwanyo yedi jemi ma pat me ot ki jemi mugu parea ma pigi tek I karme lwen man lulwen pa LRA unero olo rea ang'wen ma gutemo lui onyogu kweru ting'o jemi nyingi en Kinyera Benson, Lachung, Pangarasio Onek ki jo mukene ariyo ma kinero gi ma wan pe wang'eyo nyingi daro mo achiel ma kinero ki pala panga ki ng'ar achiel ma kinero ki choka ma nogugure ye LRA bene umaro dano maduong' ikin jo eninotiye chaden P006 bichel jirani ne ki wadina dek chaden P00 aboro achiel chaden P00 ariyo ang'wen kimen onne Benson Ojok, Dick Okot, ki jo Gange, Ruod Joseph Oruak, Charles Bomin, Oriema Kadogo, Sande Abalo, Charles Ayela, Konsi Ayet, Ogen, Opira, Okumu, Richard Otim, Santo Owera, David Okwera, Francis Kitara, George, Ronald Labeja, Christopher, Celestino, Vincent Okot, Ochana, Charles Amoa, David Oti Moyo, Christine, Pascal Oluge, Opira Bosco, ki Oriema. Luenpa LRA gudi joma kimaro gimagi ni guting te pi what guwar kama bo jemi magi ono pek tie rem kene ma ono pegero motiu jemi magi lulwen rem kene ke diugi metiu lulwen pa LRA magu wanne kiberu ka gwako joni wakpegu lwen lumon pa LRA uberu ka goyo joma kimaro gi kimuduri kudo ni wagu waru yor jo egen mukene kitwegi kachel wek bedu lui ubetek Paul joma kimaro gini guberu ka wot kitien ginono onyo mapegu rubongi wen pi kar mabo joma kimaro gini no guberu ke luoro ni kie goigi onyo kie nero gi ka ono pege tweru tiu jeme eguni bene ada LRA unero dano ma ono pege romo wot onyo magu bolo te makimi gini Kitma kiwajo kere ngalas chel no nye Pangarasio onek la chat ma ono tiki mwaga Pierre dek onyo Pierre ngwen gini en kimie base na ngwen memoranga ni enu ting karma enu wali ki jo magu magene ni en pera mo mete ki tingu te mapek enini ki gonye ki wache ni ubed pinchi ki chele tia na dek kulu iwie chaden P0 ario angwen abongwen waje ki jankot ni karmono en peromo wot inge chabira rio maono enetie idul pa Dominic Ongwen lilwen pa LRA gugoe chigu were ma en twinye uwileo kitenye kenyu jaden enini u no keru me yuane piniana bungwen kulu u ogang inge kipa jule Vincent oti waju bodgi ni gen ke foro jo egoni pibedo ikamp Dominic Ongwen bene ulogo ki jo mugu makimaro gi kun wachi gini ngati mo keken ma olui onyo ma obolo te kie nereo jo makimaro gini bene kie fonyo gi medoro lumony iuruone kite kigonyo jo mukene ento jo mukene ki gworo gi tutwal atirane awobe ma unumwara gi pe o apara beach gene ki nigen miara good bedi LRA en jo matiano tiano makimao gene ki poro gi iken lumoñ pa LRA ma unu tie ye anyera ngwen ki chwa dek ma ki chwalo gi idul pa Dominic Ongwen anyera matiano tiano ni ki chwalo gi bot commander mebedu ting ma enini lu teach ot metimo teach me ot anyera madoni ki porogi obor commander machalu mon pa commander magi awobe matiano makimao gene kiter gi chalu recruit manyen pa LRA man enini utime inendwa pa dwe ma pa mwa alivario ka dek ikare makimonyo pa jule ki nge camp meno Ineno dwe Pierre Rio Wiabungwen medwe ma ngwen mo alivario ka ngwen lulwen pa LRA umo Odek IDP camp Odek IDP camp ti o Odek sub county Omoro Gulu district Kedi beti ni Dominic Ongwen en kikume pudonyo I camp man, lulweny pa LRA magucher gumonyo camp enini no joma ono gitie ite Dominic Ongwen bedok gulubu order ma eno mew. Dominic Ongwen no mini ki order ni gen guchet gumony camp enini idul ario. Jomo kene guchet gumol barracks pa mon, jomo kene guchet kama rea no gibedi ye. En wachigeni Kim ngati mo ke ken maunu no dek IDP camp mamanti ye bene rea en bene wajikelo lwenye ni gu yak cham bedok gu mak rea monyman oto monyman uchake ikarmano lumony pagamente kidan mukene gitika ket ki kachoke moni lulweny pa LRA maromo piera dek gutiero kaketi tich order man pa Dominic Ongwen Ikenjo eni notie lutieno mamagi pe o apara bero. Lulweny pa LRA no gitiki jemi lweny maduong ma ikene tiye mudong makilwoni B10 ki mudong matieno ma ikene tiye mota. Kungilubu order pa Dominic Ongwen lweny pa LRA udonyo iude kungidonyo ki tunku malo me camp. Dulatel uchelo military barracks guchero gu monyo lumony gu voyo lumony ti gu wango barracks enoni dul mo kanene gu ket kamarea bedi yeni atirane gu chero kama trading center tiye ti gu monyo rea maono gen gibedu kono gu yako dukan kigai parea gu chelu gu goyo gu magorea bene ti gu diwi joni ni gu ting te makiyako kikono ikare me monyman la lweny pa LRA ma anyara mo uvuru tetek ki dago mo mano bedi camp kun tiyu ki laket bedok tiyu ki uloro kwon kun chwa dago enon makitika timu jeme ewani kumetika nano ne ki timu man marachi twal ma dano enoni remo chako chwe ki kume LRA guchelu dano ki wachigini guchel dano iwigi onyo ikogi we guto rea maromo pierre we beach guto enika ma lupeki awano eno magen guno ki camp eoni pol rea kichelu gi ikar magen giti kalweny la lweny pa LRA P0 ario abichel angwen ki golo order ni en uchel research odi padano lweny pa LRA mechanic wachini guchwiny ot lum ma dano ti iye iken jo maximum bale kum enini maximum bale kum gino tie dago mo muti no ti jo mu magute gilo tieno mon ma igitie ma bene gutiu lo tieno ingegi la chaden Helen opora achan waju ma chirkit eni jonni gubieno kanner la nyut enini nyurni LRA unego olo jo magi ikar me monyman Adoni Okulu min ota gudu ki lakwarne Betty Adong ki nyare ajok Catherine Amono en kichele ikarma eno bielo latien inge ento latien meno uloye to Okeny Aldo Okelo Aira Labanya Charles Obua Doris Apio Genaro Ongwen Jimmy Ojok Catherine Lake Kevin Apio Kerobina Achayo Kijekia Okech Veronica Auma Mary Achayo Monica Achiro Wilson Okoya Obaumoro Pedwang Opio Thomas Opio Thomas Ojok Valentino Okot Walter Ojok Atikon tie ngatu kena mano bedi kam kenyu mapeki nye Mary Agudu Doreen Ojok DP Achayo Aboni Chaden P0 Ario Abichela Bungwen Marne ki lakwarne ki anyara achel makino ikulu LRA bene utemu na kurea ikar me man tie olo rea apa ma kitemu na kugi LRA uchelu I odi padano kinero lacho won otmeno ti daro enuni kiwane ingore kiwachini LRA utemu naku jo magi enikar me man Santa Akelo, Betty Atenyo, Christopher Moro, David Boa, Chaden P0 Ario, Abij Abrio, Kengali, Kimien Ote, Lacho Mo Mauno Chuingat Yak Tugu, Min Okot LC, Ki Daramo Makichelu Idoge. Naku civilian enini puti me yudek IDP camp keken. Rea mokane makimarogi ki camp, kinerogi ikar magen guberu ka yele onyogu tembului. Lulwen pa LRA, gunero lati au ngati moni makima awobi mo makima matidi pia no tiano quot chuno en peramo medeki ward. Ikin jo makinerogi ikarma LRA dong tika ki udek IPT camp no tiye aroja ati Hillary Kilama Lalam Kirose Awero. Medical meno cho abungwen makimaogi ki camp chiki diugi niguting la luen pa LRA mauno wane ikare me otomon man bane kinero. Ikarma la luen pa LRA mano toki awano ne. Cho abungwen magi onotiye David Ojok, James Ayela, James Titus Latigo, Kidega, Lagi, Patrick Opap Odong, Pomala, Okot, Ojok, Ki, Fabio Oto. Jo makimao gi mauno tiye lutieno, memwaka apara rio nyo apara chil nyo apara rio, kidiu gi metiu jemi maki yaro ki camp kenyo. Jo makimao gi enini, gu woki chan marach ki ching LRA maikene tiye gojo, ki jemi mugu marach makitimu ki kumgi kudo ki mudoro bene. Jo makimao gi eni ki diu gi metiu te mapek, guworo pikare malach tie anyara chel makigoyo ki lut ma Adam wi uket ikum jo mukene ngat mukene makimao kidie ni unen jo mukene makinerogi jo makimao gi ni kaguworo mot onyo kigoyo gi onyo kinerogi Jaden P0 Ario Abiero Abich Otero Kitma tie anyara chel mauno peramo wot pien tieno kwot mauno tuti kar ki tiene ki goyo wie ki ulot chi wie uket ya rio LRA ugoyo mon ma lo tieno gi notika kukoro tie mon muguma ki diwigi ni guten lo tieno gi ilum kono wagen guting te Chaden guwaju kitma lutiano magi makitenyo gi lum kenyo guvoro I ludok magitika koro. Latin mo matidi me dwe rio kibolo I yugi. Ikarme otomon man lumon pa LRA umaro olo dano Pierre Ngwen. Tie mukene makimaogi kidiugi nigu ti ki LRA maikene tiye ati Hillary Kilama, Rosa Wero, David Ojok, James Titus Latigo, James Ayela, Kidega, Lagi, Patrick Opap Odong, Pomala Okot, Ojok, Fabio Oto, Onek, Chaden P0 Ario Abiero Abich, Chaden P0 Ario Abichela Bungwen, Ki P0 Ario Abich Ario, Brian Odoronyero, Helen Adong, Alice Kidega, Achan Ada, Agnes Adoj, Ajok, Akanyo, Apeo, Atenyo, Carolina Lagulu, Dennis Otema, Doreen Aluru, Kadogo, Carla Adong, Joyce Aneno, Ochara, Paul Ojara, Richard Okelo, Santa Oling, Vitorina Akelo, ki mien pa Olet Okelo. Helen Opora Achan, Ikarm Antika Muchaden ne, Otero Kitma, Luen pa LRA Udoni Ote, Tigu Quanyo Lutin ne. No in Perama Gin, Gin good donyo, go Quanyo Lutin na winke ot. Tie Mokane, Maki Marogi ki lum, ma ki choy ki tergi kama pat, ma ikene tiye, gang pa Dominic Ongwen, civilian achel manye a jok, ki mare, ki die, ki loro en, ou daro pa LRA. Ikarme moñman, lulwen pa LRA, utor odi pa dano, dukan, ki jemi, igain pa dano, gucheru, gu kwalu jemi, dukan ki tor, ki choro jemi, wen mauno tie, iye. Jemi mauno, cha mauno kimeo, ikam, wen jo enini, gu kwalo. Lwen pa LRA, gu poro jemi magen gu kwalo ki yode kam, I gaima pat pa commander ma ikeneti ye Dominic Ongwen. Inge moñman lulwen guchero gu donyo I dul mauno la telane Dominic Ongwen. Dominic Ongwen ufoyo lulwenye piketu itich moñman. Inge moñman en uchwalu lokman bot radio ma LRA no tiu kedeme kupe kengi kilok bot lul commander pa LRA mukane ki Joseph Kony. En wachini lulwenye gu cherio dek camp gu nerodano gu marodano chi gu yaro jemi. Inge karma Dominic Ongwendo ki kalok kupe kilok radio Joseph Kony wachini menu timu be la chom awobi manu yomo iya.
Time of the attack. At a gathering the morning of the day before the attack, Dominic Ongwen had instructed LRA fighters to attack Lukodi IDP camp and everyone present at that location, including civilians, and to take food from the camp. After receiving the orders given by Dominic Ongwen, the attackers left for the attack. Dominic Ongwen stayed behind at the location of the pre-attack gathering. In the evening on the day of the attack, at least 80 LRA fighters executed Dominic Ongwen's orders and attacked Lukodi IDP camp. Amongst them were fighters under the age of 15. The LRA fighters were again heavily armed with an assortment of weapons. Following the usual pattern of attacks against IDP camps, part of the LRA fighters went into the civilian areas of the camp, while some others went to the barracks to fight the government soldiers. Government soldiers engaged the LRA fighters. However, after a short fight, the government soldiers quickly fled. The remaining civilian population in the camp were left defenseless. We see here again the sad pattern that the government forces were not able to protect the civilian population in the camps. The LRA fighters then targeted civilians within the camp. Witness P187 testified, quote, "They came prepared and ready to kill. They wanted to kill people," unquote. LRA fighters killed civilians in Lukodi IDP camp, men, women, and children. At least 48 civilians died as a result of injuries sustained during the attack. LRA fighters attempted to kill many others. Civilians were shot, burned, and beaten to death. Civilians, including children, were thrown into burning houses. One witness testified, quote, "Some children were put in a polythene bag and beaten to death. Some were locked inside and burned inside. Others were put in a bag and thrown in the bush," unquote. Witness P301 testified that he saw, I quote, bodies hacked in a barbaric way. The evidence shows that the following people were among those killed by the LRA within the camp: Keneri Okot, Kenneth Lakot, Kilama Aloyo, Kilama Kidega, Jacqueline Ane, Millie Anek, Akello Achi, Innocent Okello, Ochoko. With regard to the last three names, Akello Achi tried to run and the LRA cut her and carried her and threw her back into the fire, along with two other children, Innocent and Ochoko. An unnamed man shouting at the LRA, Christine Ajok, Otong Apio, David Otim, who was stabbed together with another man who remains unnamed, Akwesa Odok, Beatrice's son. His body was found in a sack. The LRA and other abductees had been stepping on his body in the sack as they moved. Charles Odong, Jacinta Aol, Yoyina Angom, Lalobo's son. He had been crying for his mother and the LRA fighters shot him in the mouth. Tesira Oroma, Ochara, Okwera, Olvedo, Ochaka's wife, one unnamed teenage girl, Onen Chan, witness P24's mother, Min Ochoko, Ochi, Atim, Charles Aniva, Danger Joseph Oriem, James Opiro, Janet Lalur Akello, Joseph Ojara, Obedi, Rose Kiter, Tabicha Alum, Vincent Ochaya, Santa Oroma, and a further person whose identity is kept confidential from the general public. LRA fighters attempted to kill at least 11 other civilians who managed to survive. The fighters shot at civilians and in some cases wounded them. Civilians were beaten and left for dead. Civilians, including children, were thrown into burning houses. The following persons were among the persons who survived these LRA acts of violence: Pierina Aya, Florence Adong, Adong Pasca, Piloya, Joel Opio, Ojoko, an unnamed elderly woman, Nieko, two unnamed girls who had been shot, and an unnamed girl with a burned leg. The killing of civilians was not confined to the area of Lukodi IDP camp. After they left Lukodi, LRA fighters killed persons they had abducted from the camp. Among the civilians killed in the retreat were Nancy Akello, an unnamed man stabbed with a bayonet, another unnamed abductee, Justine Omoni, Aleka and Charles Ovoya. Indeed, the LRA fighters abducted at least 29 civilians, men, women and children, to carry looted goods from the camp. Among the abductees were witness P24, Olanya, Oleka, Onek, witness P187, Joel Opio, Lili Apio, Christine Alanyo, Mili Aya, Beatrice, Marie Aol, Min Lagum, Min Ojak, Min Ojora, Alora, Okumu, Nancy Akello, Justin Omoni, Lakwech, Aleka, and Charles Ovoya. Abductees were forced to carry heavy loads, some for long distances, while tied in a line together and under armed guard to prevent their escape. They were under constant threat of beating or death. Some abductees had their children strapped to their back when they were abducted. Mothers were forced to abandon their children in the bush. LRA fighters also threw small children, including babies, into the bush. because the children were crying and making it difficult for their mothers to carry looted goods. Witness P25 testified that her 2-week-old son was naked when he was thrown into the bush. She was beaten throughout her abduction, as were other civilians. LRA fighters kept slapping and threatening her. Witness P187 was wounded by an LRA fighter as well. She was also raped by an LRA fighter. Some of the abductees were tied together. The abducted civilians were under guard to prevent their escape and constant threat of beatings or death. LRA fighters entered civilian homes and shops and looted food and other property from them in Lukodi IDP camp. During their attack on the camp, LRA fighters set huts of the civilians on fire. Approximately 210 civilian huts in the camp were burned. Civilians' household goods, including food stocks, were destroyed in these fires. Domestic animals, such as goats, were also burned by the LRA. In this way, the affected civilians, already displaced from their homes because of instability in the region, suffered another catastrophic loss. LRA fighters returned from the attack and reported to Dominic Ongwen about the success of their mission. Dominic Ongwen also reported his soldiers' attack on Lukodi IDP camp to other LRA commanders, including Joseph Kony and Vincent Oti. Dominic Ongwen, in his own words, took responsibility for the attack on Lukodi IDP camp, including specifically for the harm done to civilians. Other high-ranking members of the LRA leadership commended him for his, what they called, work. Shortly after the Lukodi attack, Dominic Ongwen was promoted by Joseph Kony to the rank of colonel. This happened on or about the 19th May 2004, during the attack on Lukodi IDP camp and its aftermath. Again, only a few weeks later, on 8th June 2004, LRA fighters subordinate to Dominic Ongwen attacked Abok IDP camp. The camp was situated in Ngai sub-county, Apache district. It contained thousands of civilians displaced by frequent LRA attacks in the region. Prior to the attack, Dominic Ongwen ordered LRA fighters subordinate to him to attack this camp. At a gathering in the foothills of Ato, Dominic Ongwen addressed the troops and gave instructions to go and loot food, abduct people, attack the barracks, burn down the camp and the barracks. Dominic Ongwen did not go to Abok as part of the fighting force. In the evening of that day, at least 20 LRA fighters executed Dominic Ongwen's orders and attacked Abok IDP camp. Amongst them were fighters under the age of 15. The LRA fighters were armed with an assortment of weapons. They went past the old barracks in the south of the camp and entered the camp firing their guns. LRA fighters went to the civilian area in the camp, and a contingent of the fighters eventually ended up near the new barracks in the northeast of the camp. While government soldiers were able to defend the new barracks, the soldiers in the area where the civilians lived, again, were not able to stop the LRA's attack on the camp. These soldiers fled the camp. In the course of the attack, LRA fighters killed at least 28 civilian residents of the camp by shooting, burning, and/or beating them. The following persons were amongst those killed by the LRA in the course of the attack: Fabio Okweng, Hatari Aniima, two of Hatari Aniima's children, Daniel Okite and Monica Ayugi, DP Okello, Alex Okweng, Barikia Adonia, Albino Okal, Justina Okal, and Evelyn Akello. Survivors returning the next morning found bodies strewn throughout the camp, including those of children. Some bodies were burned or had the backs of their heads smashed, others had been shot. Dead bodies were found inside houses, at doorsteps, and among the remains of burnt huts. These civilians were killed by LRA fighters. One of Dominic Ongwen's subordinate commanders intruded into a house with over 10 civilian inhabitants, forced several to carry looted goods, and then closed the door and set fire to the house with the remaining inhabitants inside. LRA fighters also attempted to kill civilians both during the attack and its aftermath. The evidence shows that the following persons were amongst those the LRA attempted to kill within the camp: Jacob Opio, Ciprian Ogola, and Robson Oper. In the aftermath of the attack, the LRA also attempted to kill Venturina Akite, an elderly woman. LRA fighters had ordered her to carry heavy loads, including at one point 2 goats. When she could no longer bear the weight, an LRA fighter beat and strangled her and cut her with a machete. LRA fighters passing her on the road hit her. She was left for dead, but managed to crawl back home to the camp. LRA fighters abducted many civilians and forced them to carry heavy looted goods and an injured fighter for long distances, oftentimes under the threat of beatings or death. LRA fighters forced an abductee to kill another abductee as a lesson to others who were thinking of escaping. The abductee used a club like a stick to beat the victim on the head until he died. Among the civilians abducted and forced to work for the LRA were Charles Amodo, Quentorina Akite, Evelyn Akello, Robson Oper, witness P280, Thomas Okite's daughter, Okweng, Armeni, Lucy Akello, Molly Ayugi, Monica Adur, Naiti Atim, Dilis Avor, and witness V2. Some persons abducted by the LRA during the attack were rescued by a UPDF contingent that pursued the LRA fighters as they left Abok camp. Some abductees were killed in captivity. Others eventually escaped and returned home. Some remained with the LRA, including in Dominic Ongwen's household. During the attack on the camp, the LRA fighters looted civilian houses and shops at the trading center, taking away all sorts of food items, as well as a radio, money, clothing, cooking utensils, and medicine. Furthermore, LRA fighters set huts on fire. Several hundred civilian homes were burned during the attack. Civilians' food stocks were also destroyed. Dominic Ongwen communicated the results of the attack on the LRA military radio to other LRA commanders and to Joseph Kony. He reported that his fighters carried out an attack on Abok IDP camp, erecting fire and burning everything that was there, including huts in the camp. This happened on 8th June 2004 during the attack on Abok IDP camp and its aftermath. In relation to Dominic Ongwen's actions in connection with these 4 attacks, the Chamber has found that he committed a number of war crimes and crimes against humanity. However, the Chamber has not upheld the charges of the war crime of cruel treatment and of the crime against humanity of other inhumane acts. This is due to impermissible concurrence of these 2 crimes with the crimes of torture as a war crime and as a crime against humanity, respectively. We will see this in detail in the verdict later on. In addition to the crimes committed within the context of the 4 attacks against the 4 IDP camps, Dominic Ongwen is further responsible for sexual and gender-based crimes committed directly by him against 7 women. The 7 women were abducted and so-called distributed to Dominic Ongwen and assigned to his household. They were not allowed to leave. Dominic Ongwen placed them under heavy guard. They were told or came to understand that if they tried to escape, they would be killed. During the period relevant to the charges, between 1st July 2002 and 31st December 2005, 5 of these women were forced to be Dominic Ongwen's so-called wives. Witnesses P99, 101, 214, 226, and 227. The other 2, witnesses P235 and 236, were so-called ting-tings in his household. They would also later be forced to become Dominic Ongwen's so-called wives. That, however, occurred after the period relevant to the charges brought by the prosecutor against Dominic Ongwen. During the period relevant to the charges, Dominic Ongwen had sex by force with 4 of his so-called wives. Witnesses P101, 214, 226, and 227. This happened on a repeated basis whenever Dominic Ongwen wanted. During this period, P101 became pregnant twice and gave birth to a girl and a boy fathered by Dominic Ongwen. Also, P214 became pregnant and gave birth to a girl fathered by Dominic Ongwen. All 7 women were subject to beatings at Dominic Ongwen's command at any time. They were hit with canes and sticks. Some beatings knocked them unconscious, left them unable to walk, and left permanent scars. The 7 women had to perform different domestic duties. Failing to perform these tasks led to punishment by beating. On 1st July 2002, Dominic Ongwen forced witness P226 to beat to death a captured UPDF soldier near Patongo, northern Uganda. She hit him once, as did other girls. She had blood splattered on her clothes. She had never killed anyone before, and this was part of the reason given by Dominic Ongwen on why he selected her to do this. This experience caused her severe anguish. In late 2002 or early 2003 in northern Uganda, soon after witnesses P235's abduction, Dominic Ongwen ordered her, along with other abductees, to beat people to death until their blood splashed on the abductees. Although she eventually did not have to carry out the killings, this experience caused her severe anguish. With regard to the aforementioned acts, the Chamber has inter alia entered a conviction of Dominic Ongwen for forced marriage as an other inhumane act, pursuant to Article 7, Paragraph 1K of the Rome Statute, a crime against humanity. It has found that, at the time relevant to the charges, Dominic Ongwen executed the specific legal elements of the crime of forced marriage against witnesses P99, 101, 214, 226, and 227. The Chamber wishes to outline shortly the main legal consideration for this conviction, since they are not self-explanatory. The reasons are explained in a more detailed manner in the judgment. The Chamber considers forced marriage to be an other inhumane act falling under the aforementioned provision of the Rome Statute as a crime against humanity. Every person enjoys the fundamental right to enter a marriage with the free and full consent of another person. Marriage creates a status based on a consensual and contractual relationship. It is an institution and also an act or right. The central element of forced marriage is the imposition of this status on the victim. This means the imposition, regardless of the will of the victim, of duties that are associated with marriage and with the consequent social stigma. Such a state, beyond its illegality, has social, ethical, and even religious effects, which have a serious impact on the victim's physical and psychological well-being. The victims may see themselves as being bonded or united to another person, despite the lack of consent. Additionally, a given social group may see the victim as being a so-called legitimate spouse. To the extent forced marriage results in the birth of children, this creates even more complex emotional and psychological effects on the victims and their children, beyond the obvious physical effects of pregnancy and childbearing. Accordingly, the harm suffered from forced marriage can consist of being ostracized from the community, mental trauma, the serious attack on the victim's dignity, and the deprivation of the victim's fundamental rights to choose his or her spouse. As is explained in detail in the judgment, the conduct underlying forced marriage is not fully captured by other crimes against humanity, such as sexual slavery or rape, crimes of which Dominic Ongwen has been found responsible as well. Also, the Chamber has found that, during the time relevant to the charges, Dominic Ongwen committed the crime of forced pregnancy as both a crime against humanity and a war crime with regard to witnesses P101 and P214. This is the first time that the crime of forced pregnancy is considered by a trial chamber of this court. The Chamber's interpretation of the legal elements of this crime and the related findings on the basis of the available evidence are set out in detail in the judgment. Beyond these sexual and gender-based crimes directly perpetrated by Dominic Ongwen against the seven women, so-called distributed to him, Dominic Ongwen, together with Joseph Kony and the Sinja Brigade leadership, engaged in a coordinated and methodical effort to commit sexual and gender-based crimes against women and girls. In the process, they relied on the LRA soldiers under their control. LRA fighters abducted women and girls in northern Uganda and forced them to serve in Sinja Brigade as so-called wives of members of the Sinja Brigade and as domestic servants. The evidence received by the Chamber overwhelmingly demonstrates that the abuse of women and girls in the LRA was truly systemic and institutional. This included forced marriage, sexual violence, and forced pregnancy as well. As witness P14, a senior officer during the relevant period, stated, quote, "There is no single woman who voluntarily joined. All were abducted," unquote. At some point in 2002, Joseph Kony convened everybody together and, as one witness put it, quote, "then told us that whoever did not have a wife was to get a wife, and that there were going to be abductions. Beautiful girls should be abducted." Witness P205 stated that Dominic Ongwen instructed that, quote, "two of the girls, the two beautiful girls, should be taken good care of, and that they should be taken to him," unquote. Another witness, P264, testified that Dominic Ongwen gave, as he worded it, women to soldiers as a reward. Witness P54 stated that he saw Dominic Ongwen making such decisions several times and described the process as follows, quote, "When the girls are brought, when he sees that a particular officer is ready to have a wife, then he would say, 'You go with this girl, let her stay at your home. She is now your wife.' The abducted girls and women were threatened to be killed if they tried to escape. Witness P396 testified that on one occasion, a girl was brought to the commanders after she was caught trying to escape. Everybody was called to see what was happening, quote, 'so that we know what will happen to us if we try to escape,' unquote. The witness stated that an LRA soldier beat the girl with a stick until she died. P396 specified that Dominic Ongwen was present when the girl was killed. As generally with all LRA abductees, the evidence indicates specifically that also abducted women and girls were forced to beat or kill other abductees for attempting escape or breaking the rules. Witness P352 described being forced, on Dominic Ongwen's orders, to take part in the killing of another girl who had been accused of witchcraft. Witness P351 similarly stated that she was forced to step on a boy who had tried to escape but was caught until he died. She stated that the boys with the guns, as she worded it, who forced her to perform this act, said that they wanted the new abductees who had not killed people to come and kill someone. The girls would be forced to live with male members of the LRA as husband and so-called wives. This happened regularly at a very young age. Witness P101, one of the so-called wives of Dominic Ongwen, described the horrors of being a young girl in the LRA, quote, "To my understanding and from my observation on what happened to me, when young girls are abducted, you are raped while you're still young. If you are 11 years old or 12 years old, if there is a high-ranking commander who is kind, then they will let you actually mature a little bit. But with the rest of them, they will just abduct you and make you a wife at a very young age. This is something extremely bad, and culturally, in a Choli culture, raping young girls is extremely bad. Frequently, abducted women and girls were considered so-called wives from the time they were first forced to have sex with the man they had been assigned to. The abducted women and girls were not able to refuse. Witness P138 testified, quote, "If we refuse to go to a particular husband, that means that you do not want to live. That means that you will be killed. And you will be killed immediately. So you make the decision, do I want to live or do I want to die? So you make that decision. If they give you to a particular man, if you decide to live, then you go to that man. That's how it is," unquote. Senior brigade members regularly forced abducted women and girls who had been so-called distributed to them into sexual intercourse. Sexual intercourse was specifically considered to be part of the role of the so-called wives. The first sexual intercourse was regularly enforced upon women and girls at a very young age. Oftentimes, the girls would be seen by their male captors as sexually mature after their first menstruation. The women and girls were unable to resist. This was due to the physical force used by the senior brigade members and due to the threat of punishment for disobedience and their dependence on the Senior Brigade members for survival in the bush. The abducted women and girls were treated as the exclusive property of the man they were distributed to. An abducted girl, witness P352, told the chamber that about a month after she joined Dominic Ongwen's group, a certain commander called her to his tent. P352 stated, quote, "When I arrived, he asked if I really knew what had brought me here. I said I did not know, and he told me to make his bed and that I now was his wife. I started crying and thought, how could I become his wife? He was an old man. He had gray hair, and I did not want to be his wife. When I started crying, he asked me, between death and life, what do you choose? He asked me this twice, and then I said, I choose life." Witnesses P374 story is very similar. She testified that one day a commander called her and told her, quote, "You are going to be my wife. Like the women I released, you are going to be with me and have children. So you will stay with me here where I sleep." Her statement continues as following, quote, "I became fearful and started shaking because I thought that he was going to start to sleep with me, and I was just a child. He was quite big, much older than me, maybe between 20 and 30 years old. I did not respond because I feared that if I replied, he would beat me. I think he expected me to say that I accepted to be his wife. He told me that from that day I had to make his bed, wash his clothes, and go to sleep with him. I did not want to be his wife because I was too young. I did not know what it was to be with a man, and it was not my wish to be with him." Dominic Ongwen personally assigned women and girls as so-called wives and used his authority as LRA commander to enforce the so-called marriage in Senior Brigade. Witness P351 testified that the first night that she was in the household of a commander, after being told by Dominic Ongwen that she was now that commander's so-called wife, another of the commander's so-called wives told her that he was calling her and that she, quote, "should follow any instructions she was given because we have no relatives in the bush and we have no support, and if we do not follow the rules, we would be killed." The witness continued, quote, "I was only crying. I did not say anything, nor refuse to sleep with him, because I was fearful, because he was a commander, and if I said anything or refused, I would be killed." Witness P351 stated that after that first night, the commander would sleep with her and his other so-called wives alternately. That regularly happened when commanders had several so-called wives, which often was the case. Witness P351 testified about how painful this experience was for the women and continued, quote, "I would not share my pain with anyone in the bush. I thought that if I shared this, I may be killed, because all the time I saw that girls who made mistakes were being killed. I was very scared, because he was the man who raped me. I did not know the people I stayed with, and I did not trust anybody." The abducted women and girls were also used as domestic servants, forced to perform work, such as household work and carrying items. Also, this rule was strictly enforced by physical punishment. As a result of the sexual and physical violence and the living conditions to which they were submitted, the abducted women and girls suffered severe, barely imaginable physical and mental pain. Lastly, senior soldiers, in execution of orders of Joseph Kony, Dominic Ongwen, and the Senior Brigade leadership, abducted between 1st July 2002 and 31st December 2005, innumerable children under 15 years of age in northern Uganda, and forced them to serve as senior fighters. As witness P231 worded it illustratively, quote, "The abduction means an initiation into the army, starting from 10. As already described, children under the age of 15 were also abducted during the 4 charged attacks. Dominic Ongwen abducted children himself. He saw them not as children, but as his soldiers, as he stated to witness Irumba Tingira, quote, "You call those kids children, but I call them my soldiers. So we are talking about my soldiers," unquote. After the abduction, those children underwent a cruel initiation into the LRA. They were regularly severely beaten shortly after the abduction, with the purpose, as several witnesses stated, quote, "to beat out the civilian." Furthermore, with some regularity, recruits were forced to brutally kill, or were forced to witness brutal killings shortly after their abduction. Following their abduction, children under the age of 15 years were then integrated into Senior Brigade with the aim of using them in hostilities. Upon abduction into Senior Brigade, the children were given training in fighting skills, including the use of firearms. Recruits were not taught, as part of their training, to distinguish between civilians and combatants, or between civilian objects and military objects. Finally, children under 15 years of age serving as soldiers in Senior Brigade took part in fighting. Many of them were killed during fighting. During all 4 charged attacks, children under the age of 15 participated in the hostilities. Dominic Ongwen is fully responsible for all the crimes found by the Chamber. The Chamber did not find evidence that supported the claim by the defense that Dominic Ongwen suffered from any mental disease or disorder during the period relevant to the charges, or that he committed these crimes under duress. First of all, a huge number of witnesses who described Dominic Ongwen's actions and interactions with others did not provide any testimony which could corroborate historical diagnosis of mental disease or defect during the relevant period of the charges. On the contrary, the overwhelming evidence paints a picture of Dominic Ongwen as a person in full possession of his mental abilities. He is described by his subordinates as an extremely capable fighter and commander whom they loved to follow. He planned his attacks carefully and assessed the risks together with his officers. He was repeatedly lauded by other commanders, including Joseph Kony, for his so-called good work. The Chamber in this context finds furthermore particularly important the evidence of witnesses who were held as his so-called wives. The Chamber in this context finds furthermore particularly important the evidence of witnesses who were held as his so-called wives, or were otherwise captive in Dominic Ongwen's immediate proximity at various times over the course of many years. None of them observed any behavior by Dominic Ongwen suggestive of mental disease or defect. The assessment by the Chamber is in line with the expert evidence of Professor Mezey, Dr. Abo, and Professor Weierstahl-Pust, who in a convincing way, based on their expert opinion and an analysis of the evidence, did not identify any mental disease or disorder in Dominic Ongwen during the period of the charges. Secondly, Dominic Ongwen did not commit the crimes found by the Chamber under duress. there is no basis at all in the evidence to hold that he was subjected to a threat of imminent death or imminent or continuing serious bodily harm to himself or other persons at the time of his conduct underlying the charged crimes. The evidence also shows that Dominic Ongwen was not in a situation of complete subordination vis-à-vis Joseph Kony, but frequently acted independently and even contested orders received from Joseph Kony. He was not a puppet on a string, as is evidenced amongst others by the testimony of one LRA fighter. Quote, "Well, Dominic would not just engage in something without being sure. If there is an order from his senior, he will sit down with his officers, and they would assess. If they think that is not practical, or they feel it's not feasible, Dominic would object to doing that. But if he knew he was able to accomplish that, he would do that." Unquote. The evidence furthermore indicates that in the period of the charges, Dominic Ongwen did not face any prospective punishment by death or serious bodily harm when he disobeyed Joseph Kony. He had also a realistic possibility of leaving the LRA, like many other commanders of the LRA successfully did, which he did not pursue. Rather, he rose in rank and position, including during the period of the charges, because, as Kony worded it, quote, "he's performing very well." Finally, he committed some of the crimes in private, sometimes sexual crimes in the complete privacy of his sleeping place. In view of these circumstances, it is impossible to think that he could have committed his acts under any threats. Thus, there exists no ground excluding Dominic Ongwen's criminal responsibility. His guilt has been established beyond any reasonable doubt. I have now come to the end of the oral summary of the Chamber's findings. Continue. Good. The Chamber will now proceed to pronounce the verdict, as detailed in the written judgment. The verdict in this case is particularly, exceptionally long and complex. The accused may remain seated. Trial Chamber 9 of the International Criminal Court, for the reasons set out in detail in the judgment, and on the basis of the evidence submitted and discussed before the Chamber at trial, and the entire proceedings. Pursuant to Article 74, Paragraph 2 of the Statute, finds Dominic Ongwen, under count 1 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of attack against the civilian population as such, pursuant to Articles 8, Paragraph 2e, Roman 1, and 25, Paragraph 3a of the Rome Statute, committed on 10th October 2003 at or near Padula IDP camp. Under count 2 of the charges, guilty of the crime against humanity of murder, pursuant to Article 7, Paragraph 1a and 25, Paragraph 3a of the Rome Statute, committed on 10th October 2003 at or near Padula IDP camp. Under count 3 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of murder, pursuant to Articles 8, Paragraph 2, C Roman 1, and 25, Paragraph 3a of the Rome Statute, committed on 10th October 2003 at or near Padula IDP camp. Under count 4 of the charges, guilty of the crime against humanity of torture, pursuant to Article 7, Paragraph 1f, and 25, Paragraph 3a of the Rome Statute, committed on 10th October 2003 at or near Padula IDP camp. Under count 5 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of torture, pursuant to Articles 8, Paragraph 2c, Roman 1, and 25, Paragraph 3a of the Rome Statute, committed on 10th October 2003 at or near Pajula IDP camp. Under count 6 of the charges, not guilty of the war crime of cruel treatment, pursuant to Articles 8, Paragraph 2c, Roman 1, and 25, Paragraph 3a or c or d, Roman 1 and 2, or 28a of the Rome Statute, on 10th October 2003 at or near Pajula IDP camp. Under count 7 of the charges, not guilty of the crime against humanity of other inhumane acts, pursuant to Article 7, Paragraph 1k and 25, Paragraph 3a or c or d, Roman 1 and 2, or 28a of the Rome Statute on 10th October 2003 at or near Pajula IDP camp. Under count 8 of the charges, guilty of the crime against humanity of enslavement, pursuant to Article 7, Paragraph 1c and 25, Paragraph 3 of the Rome Statute, committed on 10th October 2003 at or near Pajula IDP camp. Under count 9 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of pillaging, pursuant to Articles 8, Paragraph 2e, Roman 5, and 25, 3a of the Rome Statute, committed on 10th October 2003 at or near Pajula IDP camp. Under count 10 of the charges, guilty of the crime against humanity of persecution on political grounds of civilians perceived by the LRA as being affiliated with or supporting the Ugandan government, by attack against the civilian population, murder, torture, enslavement and pillaging, committed on 10th October 2003 at or near Pajula IDP camp, pursuant to Articles 7, Paragraph 1h and 25, 3a of the Rome Statute. Under count 11 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of attack against the civilian population as such, pursuant to Articles 8, 2e, Roman 1 and 25, 3a of the Rome Statute, committed on 29th April 2004 at or near Odek IDP camp. Under count 12 of the charges, guilty of the crime against humanity of murder, pursuant to Articles 7, 1a and 25, 3a of the Rome Statute, committed on 29th April 2004 at or near Odek IDP camp. Under count 13 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of murder, pursuant to Articles 8, 2c, Roman 1, and 25, 3a of the Rome Statute, committed on 29th April 2004 at or near Odek IDP camp. Under count 14 of the charges, guilty of the crime against humanity of attempted murder, pursuant to Articles 7, Paragraph 1a and 25, 3f and 25, 3a of the Rome Statute, committed on 29th April 2004 at or near Odek IDP camp. Under count 15 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of attempted murder, pursuant to Articles 8, 2c, Roman 1, and 25, 3f and 25, 3a of the Rome Statute, committed on 29th April 2004 at or near Odek IDP camp. Under count 16 of the charges, guilty of the crime against humanity of torture, pursuant to Article 7, 1f and 25, 3a of the Rome Statute, committed on 29th April 2004 at or near Odek IDP camp. Under count 17 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of torture, pursuant to Articles 8, 2c, Roman 1 and 25, 3a of the Rome Statute, committed on 29th April 2004 at or near Odek IDP camp. Under count 18 of the charges, not guilty of the crime against humanity of other inhumane acts, pursuant to Articles 7, 1k and 25, 3a or b or d, Roman 1 and 2 or 28a of the Rome Statute, on 29th April 2004 at or near Odek IDP camp. Under count 19 of the charges, not guilty of the war crime of cruel treatment, pursuant to Articles 8, 2c, Roman 1, and 25, 3a, or b, or d, Roman 1 and 2, or 28a of the Rome Statute, on 29th April 2004 at or near Odek IDP camp. Under count 20 of the charges, guilty of the crime against humanity of enslavement, pursuant to Articles 7(1)(c) and 25(3)(a) of the Rome Statute, committed on 29th April 2004 at or near Odek IDP camp. Under count 21 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of pillaging, pursuant to Articles 8(2)(e) Roman 5 and 25(3)(a) of the Rome Statute, committed on 29th April 2004 at or near Odek IDP camp. Under count 22 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of outrages upon personal dignity, pursuant to Articles 8(2)(c) Roman 2 and 25(3)(a) of the Rome Statute, committed on 29th April 2004 at or near Odek IDP camp. Under count 23 of the charges, guilty of the crime against humanity of persecution on political grounds of civilians perceived by the LRA as being affiliated with or supporting the Ugandan government, by attack against the civilian population as such, murder, attempted murder, torture, enslavement, outrages upon personal dignity, and pillaging, committed on 29th April 2004 at or near Odek IDP camp, pursuant to Articles 7(1)(h) and 25(3)(a) of the Rome Statute. Under count 24 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of attack against the civilian population as such, pursuant to Articles 8(2)(e) Roman 1 and 25(3)(a) of the Rome Statute, committed on or about 19th May 2004 at or near Lokodi IDP camp. Under count 25 of the charges, guilty of the crime against humanity of murder, pursuant to Article 7(1)(a) and 25(3)(a) of the Rome Statute, committed on or about 19th May 2004 at or near Lokodi IDP camp. Under count 26 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of murder, pursuant to Articles 8(2)(c) Roman 1 and 25(3)(a) of the Rome Statute, committed on or about 19th May 2004 at or near Lokodi IDP camp. Under count 27 of the charges, guilty of the crime against humanity of attempted murder, pursuant to Articles 7(1)(a) and 25(3)(f) and 25(3)(a) of the Rome Statute, committed on or about 19th May 2004 at or near Lokodi IDP camp. Under count 28 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of attempted murder, pursuant to Articles 8(2)(c) Roman 1 and 25(3)(f) and 25(3)(a) of the Rome Statute, committed on or about 19th May 2004 at or near Lokodi IDP camp. Under count 29 of the charges, guilty of the crime against humanity of torture, pursuant to Articles 7(1)(f) and 25(3)(a) of the Rome Statute, committed on or about 19th May 2004 at or near Lokodi IDP camp. Under count 30 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of torture, pursuant to Articles 8(2)(c) Roman 1 and 25(3)(a) of the Rome Statute, committed on or about 19th May 2004 at or near Lokodi IDP camp. Under count 31 of the charges, not guilty of the crime against humanity of other inhumane acts, pursuant to Articles 7(1)(k) and 25(3)(a) or (b) or (d) Roman 1 and 2 or 28(a) of the Rome Statute, on or about 19th May 2004 at or near Lokodi IDP camp. Under count 32 of the charges, not guilty of the war crime of cruel treatment, pursuant to Articles 8(2)(c) Roman 1 and 25(3)(a) or (b) or (d) Roman 1 and 2 or 28(a) of the Rome Statute, on or about 19th May 2004 at or near Lokodi IDP camp. Under count 33 of the charges, guilty of the crime against humanity of enslavement, pursuant to Articles 7(1)(c) and 25(3)(a) of the Rome Statute, committed on or about 19th May 2004 at or near Lokodi IDP camp. Under count 34 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of pillaging, pursuant to Articles 8(2)(e) Roman 5 and 25(3)(a) of the Rome Statute, committed on or about 19th May 2004 at or near Lokodi IDP camp. Under count 35 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of destruction of property, pursuant to Articles 8(2)(e) Roman 12 and 25(3)(a) of the Rome Statute, committed on or about 19th May 2004 at or near Lukodi IDP camp. Under count 36 of the charges, guilty of the crime against humanity of persecution on political grounds of civilians perceived by the LRA as being affiliated with or supporting the Ugandan government by attack against the civilian population as such, murder, attempted murder, torture, enslavement, pillaging and destruction of property, committed on or about 19th May 2004 at or near Lukodi IDP camp, pursuant to Articles 7.1h and 25.3a of the Rome Statute. Under count 37 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of attack against the civilian population as such, pursuant to Articles 2e Roman 1 and 25.3a of the Rome Statute, committed on 8th June 2004 at or near Abok IDP camp. Under count 38 of the charges, guilty of the crime against humanity of murder, pursuant to Article 7, Paragraph 1a and 25.3a of the Rome Statute, committed on 8th June 2004 at or near Abok IDP camp. Under count 39 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of murder, pursuant to Articles 8.2c Roman 1 and 25.3a of the Rome Statute, committed on 8th June 2004 at or near Abok IDP camp. Under count 40 of the charges, guilty of the crime against humanity of attempted murder, pursuant to Articles 7.1a and 25.3f and 25.3a of the Rome Statute, committed on 8th June 2004 at or near Abok IDP camp. Under count 41 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of attempted murder, pursuant to Articles 8.2c Roman 1 and 25.3f and 25.3a of the Rome Statute, committed on 8th June 2004 at or near Abok IDP camp. Under count 42 of the charges, guilty of the crime against humanity of torture, pursuant to Articles 7.1f and 25.3a of the Rome Statute, committed on 8th June 2004 at or near Abok IDP camp. Under count 43 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of torture, pursuant to Articles 8.2c Roman 1 and 25.3a of the Rome Statute, committed on 8th June 2004 at or near Abok IDP camp. Under count 44 of the charges, not guilty of the crime against humanity of other inhumane acts, pursuant to Articles 7.1k and 25.3a or b or d Roman 1 and 2 or 28a of the Rome Statute, on 8th June 2004 at or near Abok IDP camp. Under count 45 of the charges, not guilty of the war crime of cruel treatment, pursuant to Articles 8, Paragraph 2c, Roman 1 and 25.3a or b or d Roman 1 and 2 or 28a of the Rome Statute, on 8th June 2004 at or near Abok IDP camp. Under count 46 of the charges, guilty of the crime against humanity of enslavement, pursuant to Articles 7.1c and 25.3a of the Rome Statute, committed on 8th June 2004 at or near Abok IDP camp. Under count 47 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of pillaging, pursuant to Articles 8.2e Roman 5 and 25.3a of the Rome Statute, committed on 8th June 2004 at or near Abok IDP camp. Under count 48 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of destruction of property, pursuant to Articles 8.2e Roman 12 and 25.3a of the Rome Statute, committed on 8th June 2004 at or near Abok IDP camp. Under count 49 of the charges, guilty of the crime against humanity of persecution on political grounds of civilians perceived by the LRA as being affiliated with or supporting the Ugandan government by attack against the civilian population as such, murder, attempted murder, torture, enslavement, pillaging and destruction of property, committed on 8 June 2004 at or near a Bok IDP camp, pursuant to Articles 7.1h and 25.3a of the Rome Statute. Under count 50 of the charges, guilty of the crime of forced marriage, an inhumane act of a character similar to the acts set out in Article 7.1a to j as a crime against humanity, pursuant to Articles 7.1k and 25.3a of the Rome Statute, of witness P99 between 1st July 2002 and September 2002, of witness P101 between 1st July 2002 and July 2004, of witness P214 between September 2002 and 31st December 2005, of witness P226 between 1st July 2002 and sometime in 2003, of witness P227 between approximately April 2005 and 31st December 2005. Under count 51 of the charges, guilty of the crime against humanity of torture, pursuant to Articles 7.1f and 25.3 of the Rome Statute, of witness P101 between 1st July 2002 and July 2004, of witness P214 between September 2002 and 31st December 2005, of witness P226 between 1st July 2002 and sometime in 2003, of witness P227 between approximately April 2005 and 31st December 2005. Under count 52 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of torture, pursuant to Articles 8.2c Roman 1 and 25.3a of the Rome Statute, of witness P101 between 1st July 2002 and July 2004, of witness P214 between September 2002 and 31st December 2005, of witness P226 between 1st July 2002 and sometime in 2003, of witness P227 between approximately April 2005 and 31st December 2005. Under count 53 of the charges, guilty of the crime against humanity of rape, pursuant to Articles 7.1g and 25.3a of the Rome Statute, of witness P101 between 1st July 2002 and July 2004, of witness P214 between September 2002 and 31st December 2005, of witness P226 between 1st July 2002 and sometime in 2003, of witness P227 between approximately April 2005 and 31st December 2005. Under count 54 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of rape, pursuant to Articles 8.2e Roman 6 and 25.3a of the Rome Statute, of witness P101 between 1st July 2002 and July 2004, of witness P214 between September 2002 and 31st December 2005, of witness P226 between 1st July 2002 and sometime in 2003, of witness P227 between approximately April 2005 and 31st December 2005. Under count 55 of the charges, guilty of the crime against humanity of sexual slavery, pursuant to Articles 7.1g and 25.3a of the Rome Statute, of witness P101 between 1st July 2002 and July 2004, of witness P214 between September 2002 and 31st December 2005, of witness P226 between 1st July 2002 and sometime in 2003, of witness P227 between approximately April 2005 and 31st December 2005. Under count 56 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of sexual slavery, pursuant to Articles 8.2e Roman 6 and 25.3a of the Rome Statute, of witness P101 between 1st July 2002 and July 2004, of witness P214 between September 2002 and 31st December 2005, of witness P226 between 1st July 2002 and sometime in 2003, of witness P227 between approximately April 2005 and 31st December 2005. Under count 57 of the charges, guilty of the crime against humanity of enslavement, pursuant to Articles 7(1)(c) and 25(3)(a) of the Rome Statute, of witness P99 between 1st July 2002 and September 2002, of witness P235 from September 2002 to 31st December 2005, of witness P236 between September 2002 and 31st December 2005. Under count 58 of the charges, guilty of the crime against humanity of forced pregnancy, pursuant to Articles 7(1)(g) and 25(3)(a) of the Rome Statute, of witness P101, 2 pregnancies between 1st July 2002 and July 2004, and of witness P214 sometime in 2005. Under count 59 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of forced pregnancy, pursuant to Articles 8(2)(e) Roman 6 and 25(3)(a) of the Rome Statute, of witness P101, 2 pregnancies between 1st July 2002 and July 2004, and of witness P214 sometime in 2005. Under count 60 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of outrages upon personal dignity, pursuant to Articles 8(2)(c) Roman 2 and 25(3)(a) of the Rome Statute, of witness P226 sometime in 2002 or early 2003, close to Patongo, northern Uganda, of witness P235 sometime in late 2002 or early 2003 at an unspecified location in northern Uganda. Under count 61 of the charges, guilty of the crime of forced marriage, an inhumane act of character similar to the act set out in Articles 7(1)(a) to J as a crime against humanity, pursuant to Articles 7(1)(k) and 25(3)(a) of the Rome Statute, from at least 1st July 2002 until 31st December 2005. Under count 62 of the charges, guilty of the crime against humanity of torture, pursuant to Articles 7(1)(f) and 25(3)(a) of the Rome Statute, from at least 1st July 2002 until 31st December 2005. Under count 63 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of torture, pursuant to Articles 8(2)(c) Roman 1 and 25(3)(a) of the Rome Statute, from at least 1st July 2002 until 31st December 2005. Under count 64 of the charges, guilty of the crime against humanity of rape, pursuant to Articles 7(1)(g) and 25(3)(a) of the Rome Statute, from at least 1st July 2002 until 31st December 2005. Under count 65 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of rape, pursuant to Articles 8(2)(e) Roman 6 and 25(3)(a) of the Rome Statute, from at least 1st July 2002 until 31st December 2005. Under count 66 of the charges, guilty of the crime against humanity of sexual slavery, pursuant to Articles 7(1)(g) and 25(3)(a) of the Rome Statute, from at least 1st July 2002 until 31st December 2005. Under count 67 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of sexual slavery, pursuant to Articles 8(2)(e) Roman 6 and 25(3)(a) of the Rome Statute, from at least 1st July 2002 until 31st December 2005. Under count 68 of the charges, guilty of the crime against humanity of enslavement, pursuant to Articles 7(1)(c) and 25(3)(a) of the Rome Statute, from at least 1st July 2002 until 31st December 2005. Under count 69 and 70 of the charges, guilty of the war crime of conscripting children under the age of 15 into an armed group and using them to participate actively in hostilities, pursuant to Articles 8(2)(e) Roman 7 and 25(3)(a) of the Rome Statute, between 1st July 2002 and 31st December 2005 in northern This concludes the verdict rendered by the Chamber on Dominic Ongwen. The Chamber has therefore convicted Dominic Ongwen of a total of 61 crimes, comprising both crimes against humanity and war crimes. To try to sum up in a few words the lengthy and technical verdict rendered by the Chamber, Dominic Ongwen has been found guilty beyond reasonable doubt of a number of crimes committed in the context of the four specified attacks on the IDP camps of Pajule, Odek, Lukodi and Bok. Attacks against the civilian population, murder, attempted murder, torture, enslavement, outrages upon personal dignity, pillaging, destruction of property, and persecution. Secondly, a number of sexual and gender-based crimes he committed against 7 women, whose names and individual stories are specified in the judgment, who were abducted and placed into his household, forced marriage, torture, rape, sexual slavery, enslavement, forced pregnancy, and outrages upon personal dignity. Thirdly, a number of further sexual and gender-based crimes he committed against girls and women within the Senior Brigade. Forced marriage, torture, rape, sexual slavery, and enslavement. And lastly, the war crime of conscripting children under the age of 15 into the Senior Brigade and using them to participate actively in hostilities. As I said, the written judgment, containing the full and reasoned statement of the Chamber's findings and conclusions, and, which I repeat, remains the only authoritative document in this regard, has been issued by the Chamber this morning and will be notified shortly. In due course, the Chamber will impose on Dominic Ongwen the sentence for the crimes of which he has been convicted. For the purposes of determining the appropriate sentence, the Chamber will also consider submissions by the prosecutor, the defense from Mr. Dominic Ongwen, and the legal representatives of the participating victims. A decision in this regard, including as concerns the strict timelines of the proceedings leading to the imposition of the sentence, has also been issued by the Chamber this morning. It will be notified shortly as well. This concludes today's hearing for the delivery in open court of the judgment in the case of the prosecutor versus Dominic Ongwen. The court is adjourned.
All rise.